My name is Jacob Koenig, and for my ISP, the book I chose was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I had recently finished the book and decided it would be the optimal choice, considering it would be fresh in my mind still. The Road tells the story of a father and son who struggle to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. Food and water are always an issue, but they must also avoid any other people they may find on their journey. These raiders and pillagers will take advantage of anyone they can in order to survive. So, without further ado, here's my essay. The Road, an examination of the use of narrative devices to create a bleak atmosphere, by Jacob Koenig. A father and son walk along a road. They have a destination, and they know how to get there. It seems like this plot has been rehashed and done many times over, and yet, this time, it's different. This father has no wife, and this boy has no mother. She killed herself long ago. This road they walk along is frequented by cannibals and slave traders. The father and his son are scavenging for food as they push along a shopping cart filled with what little they have to their names. The world died a long time ago, and it took with it all sense of hope and belonging. The world may be earth, but all earth on it is covered in soot and ash. The sun dares not show its face to this gray planet that was once many shades of gracious green and beautiful blue. The father and son make their way to the coast and hope to find something there. They have hope, but not much else. The Road by Cormac McCarthy tells an unforgiving and realistic tale of desperation and survival in a world that many would argue is not worth surviving in. The author uses many tools to achieve a sense of a foreboding and gloomy atmosphere, but there are three in the foremost. Grisly and horrible details apply to nearly every aspect of this post-apocalyptic world crafted in the novel. Such description, when applied to burnt bodies as they yell in anguish to the skies, seared to the pavement of a cracked road, is certainly enough to paint a picture in one's head. The author applies this level of description to not only the outright horrific, but also the things that linger longer on the mind. The in-depth explanation of the sky, the road, or the trees, and the amount of soil, ash, and soot covering each is phenomenal. It creates a truly dark and depressing atmosphere that the reader cannot escape from. Secondly, the author plays on themes of a family very well. The father and son relationship, as well as the unspoken mother's suicide, create much tension and a sense of foreboding. The reader is constantly rooting for the pair to survive and wills them to keep moving on toward their goal. Whenever either of the two is in danger, the reader becomes very engrossed and concerned. When something inevitably bad does happen to one of them, it really emotionally affects the reader. Finally, the subject of morality, when contrasted between the father and son with the rest of the human race, creates a constant conflict between hope and hopelessness. The father constantly reassures his son that he is carrying the fire of goodness in the world, and that if he dies, so does the goodness of the human spirit. The cannibals and looters of the world represent evil and lack of morality, and are the pure embodiment of antagonistic behavior. They always serve to create a world filled with danger at every turn and lend much to the bleak atmosphere. Due to the author's level of detail when describing the setting, the relationship between the father and son, and the tension between good and evil, The Road creates a dark and unforgiving atmosphere. The level of detail with which McCarthy uses in this novel is absolutely astounding. He manages to truly mold a world of which the reader wants to escape from, while simultaneously not wanting to put the book down. For example, as the reader begins the novel, the narrator creates a scene of a post-apocalyptic world for the reader using very gloomy descriptions. Night's dark, beyond darkness, and the days more gray each one than what had gone before, like the onset of some cold glaucoma dimming away the world. McCarthy, page 1. The placement of this quote on the very first page in the novel is very bold, and tells the reader precisely the kind of book they are getting themselves into. The use of not only night, but the association of the world with sickness creates dual layers of feelings to be paired with the scene. The author manages to create the sensation of waking up in the middle of the night with a runny nose as a light mist creeps across the lawn. A sickness creeps into one's stomach as they roll over and attempt to fall back into bliss, but to no avail. Similarly, as the father and son sit by a concrete balustrade near a gray river, they look out further down the road as the narrator makes note of the scene. They sat in the ashes by the side of the road and looked out to the east where the shape of the city was darkening into the coming night. They saw no lights. McCarthy, page 159. Here, the author brings into account the presence of ashes. The ashes of something long lost, perhaps a building or a car. They are distant memories, no more than that. In 2 sentences, the author manages to bring about a sense of nostalgia for a world long gone, as well as reinforce the fact that a city will never be bustling again. The encroaching darkness brings about a very foreboding feeling. This, coupled with the outright statement of the lack of light, creates a scene doubly as powerful. Not only is there darkness, there is no light. The author repeats himself in a way, but says something entirely different and powerful in so few words. Clearly, the author is a master of the art of subtlety and implications in the form of detail. He managed to manufacture a completely involving and dark world through the use of his careful choice of words, and imagery. The father and son are constant at silent odds and ends. The son is worried about his father more than himself, and the father is more worried about the son than himself. The son is all that the father has to live for, and if he were to die, the father would commit suicide. This really sets the novel with an extremely dark tone, through the theme of death forever lingering over the head of the reader. The father clearly loves his son, and he means the entire world to him. Case in point, in their sleeping bags in the forest, the father discusses with his son what would happen if he were to die. If you died, I would want to die too. So you could be with me? Yes, so I could be with you. Okay. McCarthy, page 11. Putting oneself into the father's shoes, the very concept of discussing the death of one's son is quite disturbing. Even more distressing is accepting the fact and openly admitting it that if the son were to die, he would kill himself. To have only one thing worth living for, to lose it, and then to kill yourself because of that, is a very depressing notion. That is one of the most ultimate tragedies, dating back to Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, for example. Similarly, as the pair evade some enemies, the father instructs the boy of what to do should they catch him. If they find you, you are going to have to do it. Do you understand? Shh, no crying. Do you hear me? You know how to do it. You put it in your mouth and you point it up. Do it quick and hard. McCarthy, page 113. Here is depicted a very sad and unnerving scene in which the father instructs the boy to kill himself should the looters discover him. He knows that they would make him a slave or consume him should they find him. The father would give up his only bullet to ensure that his son does not suffer in this harsh world. He would give up his own happiness and self-worth for the optimal solution to end the suffering for who he loves the most. Here is a very distressing scene that perfectly melds with the themes and atmosphere of the novel, pushing it further along. All of this works simply because the family relationship makes the reader care deeply for them. The more the reader cares about the protagonist, the more they take into account the world around them and just how unwelcoming and dangerous it is. The age-old concept of morality has been questioned for centuries, dating back to philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle. Morality, or rather, good and evil, is a constant theme in every storytelling medium. The Road makes no escape from morality, but rather manipulates it and uses it to further a depressing tone. Overall, a sense of hopelessness is the end result of this battle between good and evil employed by the author. A constant struggle between father and son and the rest of the human race makes for much tension and a never-ending state of conflict. Time and time again, the father assures his son that he carries the goodness of the human spirit within his body and that it's vital that he survive. For example, after encounter with the bad guys, the father explained to his son his importance and place in the world. You want to know what the bad guys look like. Now you know. It may happen again. My job is to take care of you. I was appointed to do that by God. I will kill anyone who touches you. Do you understand? McCarthy, page 77. Clearly the author finds that his entire reason for living is to keep his son alive. He will do anything and go to any lengths to ensure his safety at all costs. The son is of great importance not only to him, but to the human race as a whole. Furthermore, as the father lays dying on the ground next to his son, he tells him just how important his survival is. You have to carry the fire. It's inside you. It was always there. I can see it. McCarthy, pages 278 to 279. This fire is mentioned numerous times throughout the novel, but here at the end, its mentioning is the most crucial. As he dies, the father tries to give the best reassuring advice that he possibly can. He tells his son that even in a world with no redeeming qualities, one for which one would wish to leave very much, there is still reason to keep on going. No matter how dark, bleak, or gloomy the situation can get, there is always a reason to hold the fire of life close to one's heart and never let it go. Life is something to cherish even in the worst of times. In this quote, the author manages to bring about the light of the human spirit while simultaneously reminding the reader of how depressing a situation is. Ash falls to the ground as a son and father, each the world's entire, part paths for the last time. During this, the reader is told why life is worth living and why existence is such a gift. It is absolutely astounding that such polar opposite concepts can be accrued from such few sentences. Truly the sense of hopelessness that accompanies the clash of good and evil, coupled with a sense of the oppression of the human spirit, creates a dark and depressing atmosphere. Due to the author's level of detail in describing the setting, the relationship between the father and son, and the tension between good and evil, The Road creates a dark and unforgiving atmosphere. The detail used when describing the mist rolling down a road can not only create a visual scene, but it also leaves much room for inference and metaphors to be applied by the reader. The love the father has for his son and vice versa makes for a constant state of uneasiness and discomfort in the reader. One cares deeply for them and their survival, and any feelings had by the protagonist is also had by the reader. The audience is sucked into this world, and one feels as though they were trudging through the ashes along with the characters. Finally, the relentless combat of good and evil makes for a perpetual state of unease in the reader. From this unease, the author effortlessly manipulates and crafts a dreadful atmosphere from which one is unable to escape. In the end, the reader is left at a fork in the road. Does the story that continues past the pages have darkness and danger at every turn, or is it filled with goodness and hope as long as the fire burns on within the soul of the boy? That is left to the personal stance of the reader, as well as the powerful influence of these narrative devices on them.